One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the bases out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. No, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Well, preview season keeps rolling along here on the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. And it is Sunbelt preview time. And so we've brought in Ben Moore of 247, PantherTalk.com. Ben, glad to talk some Funbelt with you here tonight. How are you?
Yeah, great. Mitch, appreciate you having me on, man. Always a good time to talk Sunbelt football. And now that the players have arrived around the conference, you kind of get a little bit of feel. You're kind of having that appetizer to college football. We know the main course is a couple months away, but it's certainly going to be exciting to kind of break things down. And we were talking a little bit off air. All the preview mags are out, right? All the podcasting that we're doing, and excited to talk a little Sunbelt tonight.
Yeah, it's fun to have guys, presumably in their final destinations. The portal has finally settled down, and now we've got the pieces on the roster, but it feels like a jigsaw puzzle, maybe at the G5 level, especially, to try and sort that out. So we're going to do that with the Sunbelt here tonight. And one of the things that you said right off the top is we were chatting off stage, the Sunbelt is one of those conferences that truly feels like it's wide open. Yes, of course, you're going to have James Madison get a lot of preseason picks. You're going to have App State, Coastal expected to kind of make a return to power, right? Will Louisiana do what they did in the Sun Belt West last year? But it truly feels like, as you dig into all of these rosters for good reasons and for maybe some bad reasons as well, it feels like this conference is as wide open as any in the country.
There's no doubt, and I think ultimately when the league went, you have that East West, and you kind of had that initial split. One of the few conferences in FBS that's still remaining East and West, basically not kind of lumping everyone in together and just taking the top two teams. We had a conversation this morning about it with our staff, talking specifically about Marshall. Right, you win the East, Coach of the Year. And into the wind he goes, and now he's at Southern Miss, and in one of the most bizarre, kind of 3 to 6 week spans there for any college football program, where you legit had not enough players on your active roster to play a bowl game, and they had to opt out. What is Marshall today? What is Southern Miss today? We know a lot of those players went from Marshall to Southern Miss, and I think somewhere in the neighborhood they were either at the top or near the top in terms of incoming transfer portal additions for the Sun Belt at last check. What are they? I don't really know. So does that sway some power, right? We talked about a little bit earlier. Is App State rise back up? Coastal having that opportunity to come back. Georgia Southern had a pop year last year after kind of the buzzards were circling around Clay Helton, and all of a sudden the athletic director gives Helton a new deal. So he may or may not be there for a little bit while longer. I can tell you from living in this state and going to the rival school, the memory of that fan base is very short. So two back-to-back losing seasons certainly had his seat warm, but an 8-5 season should slow that a little bit. But no, it's really going to be wide open top to bottom. You mentioned James Madison as well. Just, we were talking a little bit off air a little bit earlier today. I really look at, coach, coordinator, quarterback. Mm-hmm. And those are kind of the keys. If you can have a returning quarterback, if you have, a good play caller and coach, you got a shot in this league to kind of navigate these churning waters, really, as we talked about a little bit. Some of the great players in the Sun Belt have moved on and moved up. And we've certainly seen some transition all around college football, and the Sun Belt's no different.
So let's do that. Let's start with James Madison, because right now, as I finish our Sun Belt preview and as I've looked at these rosters, I do lean towards thinking that the Dukes are probably the favorite here. But an interesting strategy from Bob Chesney. He didn't take a ton of P4 transfers. He loaded up with guys from the FCS, from D2, his old stomping grounds at Holy Cross and Richmond, right? Other locations that he's a lot more familiar with. You talk about the quarterback position. Alonzo Barnett lost at the end of last year with a knee injury. So they bring in Matthew Sluka, who obviously did big things at Holy Cross, and then Cameron Coleman as well from Richmond. As it stands right now, where do you see the quarterback position playing out at James Madison, and how that affects their conference run with, what is, I think, a challenging schedule in the Sun Belt?
Yeah, and I'll start, with your comments too, talking about FCS and move ups. It's an interesting dynamic, and we've seen it. I've covered high school football recruiting for the state of Georgia for almost 18 years now, and it's interesting because the old argument was you had the top of FCS and the bottom of G5. That talent level was not too far off. We see the talent gap in some cases, especially across the line of scrimmage and other places. But even at the quarterback position, I have conversations with our national recruiters, and they're saying, listen, guys that are a little bit undersized or under-recruited, maybe under-evaluated in high school that do end up on these FCS rosters, they're popping all over the place, and they're showing up on rosters. And you mentioned it, having somebody who's, like Chesney, who's coaching the FCS, where he can go back and his coaches can look at their evaluations for maybe 2 or 3 years and go find experienced guys to pop up, where I wouldn't be surprised if one of these guys ends up taking the first snap when, in week 1. But you mentioned Sluka as well, who had an interesting, tenure out there in Vegas, to say the least. But no, I think ultimately you have a great play caller. There's going to be skilled guys around them. And more importantly to me, the Duke's defense was legit last year. And they really carried that team. If they can continue to kind of, this is where I kind of go back to, it comes down to coaching for the portal, but also trying to find scheme fit, right? Where you have guys who may not look the part, coming off, out of the recruiting rankings or things that way. And to your point, I think JMU, they 30, 31 additions basically this year. Nothing that's going crazy. They're not going, and grabbing a bunch of P5 guys, which may grab some headlines for some. But I also have the other side. And I've talked to some folks across the group of 5 where, hey, maybe the higher recruited guys come to a Sun Belt and maybe think they should be the guy, right? So you want some guys that potentially are hungry. And I can see that playing out certainly there in Harrisonburg this year.
Elsewhere in the East, you've got App State and Coastal that are both looking to rebound this year. Is there a team out of those two that you lean towards maybe being a little bit more successful by the end of the season?
Yeah, it's wild because, App State had always been kind of the gold standard really in the East. They were consistent. You knew they were going to be tough to beat at home. They sell out basically every single game. Boone's one of the toughest places to play in America statistically. And it was so odd to kind of see them tailspin in such a way where it just was un-App State-like, right? Coastal's always been interesting to me because they really caught lightning in a bottle in 2020 and 2021. They had a fabulous play caller. Jamie Chadwell's an unbelievable offensive mind. Really got that humming with Grayson McCall. And then when Grayson McCall comes back, a little bit heavier, he said he beefed up so he wouldn't get hit so much, couldn't run as much. Didn't work out so well. I think it's a big year, certainly in Conway for the Chanticleers, and I would expect App State to bounce back because what has history told us, right? They're not going to be down very long.
Yeah, and I think maybe some questions around the new man in Doa Loggins who comes in. Felt like South Carolina was kind of excited maybe to get him out of town.
Very strange vibes, yes.
Very, very strange way that his tenure ended there. But, App State made a very quick hire. It was, a quick decision. And so it felt like, okay, maybe they've got their man there. They lose Joey Aguilar, right? Transfers to UCLA. We think, okay, he's going to the West Coast. And then we have the bizarre trade with UCLA and Tennessee and Nico Iamaleava essentially swapping places with him. So at quarterback for the Mountaineers, it's kind of a bunch of guys who I think when they arrived in college, a lot of acumen, a lot of hype around them, thinking of AJ Swan who was at Vanderbilt, at LSU. J.J. Cole at Iowa State was supposed to be kind of what Rocco Becht is for the Cyclones now. And then you've even got Billy Wiles from Southern Miss. So when it comes to quarterback at App State, you mentioned you look at head coach, coordinator, and quarterback. Do you trust one of those three guys to help ascend App State back to, the throne, if you will?
Yeah, that's the interesting battle to me. And something too we talked about a little bit earlier with JMU. I mean, App State typically, held their hat on defense, and they weren't not good defensively.
Yeah,
they got ran up and down on last year in kind of shocking ways. But no, I mean, I like AJ Swan, local Metro Atlanta kid, and you're looking for, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, like guys that had a big hype going to big schools. Maybe that wasn't the fit for them. Maybe they were overhyped in some cases, or maybe just didn't lean in or live up to that hype. You get humbled real quick in the Sun Belt because there's guys that are looking to make a name for herself, as we talked about a little bit off air in this NIL and portal era. There's guys who believe, hey, I can come down the Sun Belt and ball out for a year and get an opportunity to go bounce back. So maybe that's one of those, one of the path for some guys, but that's going to be a heck of a battle between that two, or maybe a mystery candidate, as you mentioned earlier.
Well, take me now to the Peach State. You're obviously very familiar with Georgia State, former walk-on there. Talk to me about the transition that we had last year from Sean Elliott just leaving, right, to go take the tight end position at South Carolina. Did not like the NIL, the being in charge of a football program in today's modern era. Very fair. Timing felt terrible for Georgia State. Felt like they got left high and dry. Del McGee goes 3-9 in his first season, but Ben, as I look at the roster, there are some intriguing pieces here, and I can certainly talk myself into thinking, you know what, the Panthers can make a bowl game this year.
Yeah, and I honestly think that's the expectation for a lot of folks in and around the program. They know what happened last year, and it's tougher to dissect each game. There's probably only really 3 games max that the Panthers just were not in for 4 quarters. And that's difficult, right? You go and knock off Vanderbilt for the first ever home win over an SEC program. Ted Hurst, kind of announces himself there as one of the better wide receivers in the group of 5, and certainly in the Sun Belt as well. Huge. Talking about Del McGee, bringing him back, part of the G5 and part of teams in the Sun Belt is not only recruiting but retention. It's not typical to retain your best player who puts up the numbers that Ted Hurst did, but guess what? He did. Was able to come back. He jumped in the portal briefly, flirted with that, and then was able to be retained by the staff. But it was a funky year. Didn't really have a full spring practice. Del's not going to make any excuses. But being here, and I told some folks when Sean left, it wasn't terribly shocking because it had been much publicized. I think he'd written about in the Columbia, South Carolina newspaper with his son playing varsity football. He wasn't traveling with the team, basically, or staying with the team for home games or away games, just coming back to coach the team on Saturday. I know folks all over the country, and you probably do too. I don't know that was a normal situation. I hadn't heard of a FBS football coach doing that. So it was obviously, he wanted to be there. It was no secret that his family never moved from Columbia to Atlanta. They would travel in for games and things like that and come back. So him being not exactly full all in there was a little bit curious, and it kind of went from there. So when we got the word that he left, Del was at the top of my board, basically in terms of replacing him. A guy that coached in the state, has won multiple national titles at the University of Georgia, been able to be just an elite recruiter, candidly. Something that I told folks when he was hired, don't ever worry about Georgia State's running back room. Sure. He knows how to recruit running backs and send them to the NFL. And if you look at their running back room now, I would put it up against probably the best in the group of 5 and one of the most impressive top to bottom from physical and speed. Said somebody the other day, if the Panthers offensive line comes together, this is going to be an elite running back situation because they're far more athletic quarterback options now. They went to more of a dual threat guy, went and stole PJ Hatter from Texas State, went and got Cam Brown from Texas Tech, guys that were, 10-7, 10-8, 100-meter guys. So you went from pocket passer last year in Christian Bayer and Zach Gibson to all right, now you can run some option, run some spread, get guys out, get matchups, things that way. But I think they feel great about the running back room, tight end room, very very strong as well. You went into the FCS ranks, go grab Cam Overton from Gardner Webb to team with Ted Hurst. You went and got a massive, wide receiver in Leo Blackburn from Georgia Tech, who's 6'5" and 200 plus. A whole lot of speed added as well. Very interesting to see as well. Dell brought in over 60 players in January to go through winter workouts, spring, and summer. So a lot of the guys in terms of the roster are pretty much set right now to come in. But I wouldn't be shocked. I've heard some rumblings about potentially another quarterback being brought in and maybe a couple other skill position players to throw in the mix, because Dell loves competition at every position, and on his coaching staff, he made changes at both coordinators this year. So offensive and defensive coordinators are different. Several changes on the defensive side of the ball in terms of assistant coaches as well. So if anybody has a sweeping view on the Panthers, other than looking at the roster, I would challenge them, because I cover them every single day and don't exactly know what I'm going to get today.
Sure. Yeah, it definitely is difficult to try and make sense of all the parts, but gosh darn it, we're gonna do our very best, right? Take me to the other side of the rivalry, Georgia Southern.
Yep.
I wrote about it in our preview. Statistically, you just look at the team on paper and you go, "Ooh, there's no way that they won very many games," because most metrics they were bottom half of the conference in.
Yep.
But then you look at the record and they were 8-5. They found a way to win some close games. They just kind of gutted their way through the season. I like some of the pieces for Helton's group as well. So when it comes to Georgia Southern, are you expecting more of the same, a regression back to the mean? It felt like they maybe overperformed what the numbers said. Where do you put them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it starts on the defense side of the ball for me. I mean, you return a quarterback in J.C. French, so you kind of think you know what you have on that side of the ball. There's some good players skill wise there, but defensively, they haven't been good since Helton's been there. It's been a really a real struggle there, and ultimately, from what we have been told, is they went a little bit younger and inexperienced on the defensive side of the ball. Really trying to go and find guys to fit or maybe ascend. And communication was a little off in the last few years, seeing guys, give up big plays, and secondary linebackers, guys pointing at each other like, what, that was yours or mine, or, didn't understand the play call. So I'm interested to see that now, seeing if there's some level of progression there on that defensive side of the ball, because otherwise, I mean, you're going to have shootout games all up and down. Give Southern credit. They don't lose a lot at home, just like their former SoCon brother in App State. Going down to Paulson Stadium is an extremely difficult place to play. They don't lose a whole lot of games down there, but they did get the Ashton Genty show put on them last year, getting him experience and getting a Heisman finalist in your building. But no, I mean, I think regression may be a little strong, but I mean, I could see 6-7 wins with no problem looking at their schedule. But it just really comes down to defense, because the one thing about Helton's offenses as well is they have been prone to turn the ball over. Whoever's under center has liked to give it to the other team a lot. And if that continues, then, you really are going to be in coin flip games almost for all 12.
Yeah, looking at their numbers, they were kind of middle of the pack in a couple of statistical categories, but then they just got eaten alive in the passing game, dead last in the Sun Belt in defending.
Secondary was victimized. I mean, it was bad, and that's the hard part about it, especially in this state. There's enough great athletes, that you can find and plug and play, at safety and corner. And this is a program that produced NFL caliber defensive backs as well. So you're looking at it and you're going, man, what's going on down there? Why can't they not find it? Is it the players or the plays, or is it a combination of both?
Last team here on the East, we'll flip it over to the West quickly. Old Dominion. They're a team that I'm certainly high on. As I've talked to other people in the G5 world, they seem to be high on the Monarchs as well. Colton Joseph had a breakout year while he was healthy the last season, and so I think it's fair to expect to see some growth there. But the Monarchs have been in close games the entire time that Ricky Ronnie has been there, right? 3-6, excuse me, a season ago in one-score games. It kept them out of the postseason. This year I wrote, I feel like just kind of progressing to the mean, they're going to find a way to win some of those coin flip games. Do you see ODU kind of loading a breakout year, or what do you expect from the Monarchs?
I really do, and I think it's one of those. They're one of those that I have circled. That this could be one of those breakout candidates. This could be one of those teams that could maybe not win the league, but really, really take that next step. Where, again, to your point, with in the one score games, if you split those, if you have one or two more, we're talking about, again, not only a 7 or 8 win team basically, but solidified a bowl game. And I think it's a big year for that coaching staff as well, because they've been talking big and bad and want to build. Defensively, you get Jason Henderson back for the 11th year. I feel like he's been in college forever. But wherever the ball is, just find him. He'll be there. I was in the building when he came up to Georgia State. I think had 21 tackles, or like 18 of them solo. It was insane. But no, I mean, I think they're definitely one of my candidates. I think in the East to really, really rise above the Ashes, because we talked about a little bit off air. These teams just beat the crap out of each other on both sides, and I think they could potentially pop above that a little bit.
Flip it over to the West, and Louisiana has run the West Division for at least the last several years, right? Ben Woolridge is gone, but they bring in a local product in Walker Howard, right? Coming back home to take over the Raging Cajuns offense. But I also look around the West and I see Arkansas State. I see, a couple other teams like Texas State maybe trying to get to meet the hype that we had for them last year. And then you've got teams like South Alabama who, man, they just had a hard reset through the portal. Yep. I don't really know what to make of teams like the Jaguars. So kind of level set the West for me. Where do you see teams gaining an edge? And similar to the East, where do you see a team maybe pressing that advantage and coming out on top?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I mean, we've kind of heard about Texas Tech. I feel like for a while, it's been kind of that. All right, is this going to be the year? Is this going to be the year? Is this going to be a year? I'm getting the sense that media and folks around the league are probably going to pick them right along with Louisiana to be that West representative there, and then that battle should be a big one as well. But I'm fascinated by DeSormo and Louisiana. I really am. I mean, you're talking about what they had losing seasons. Consecutive seasons, basically. There were a lot of people who were like, hey, this isn't the guy. We're going to throw him out. And then all of a sudden, all right, well, maybe he can stick a little bit longer. So, that's going to be, and again, for a program that has been the gold standard in the West. We talked about App State. It was App State, Louisiana. Those two programs were big time. I like South, still with pieces. You need to convince me who's going to be the quarterback there and who's going to be able to go and roll under Major Applewhite's system. I feel like they're going to be good defensively. Don't know how great they're going to be defensively, but I think they may have to win some games funky. You mentioned Arkansas State. It's a big year for Butch Jones. It really, really is. He was interesting. He had some interesting comments to Del McGee in the postgame here in Atlanta, talking to him and encouraging him to talk about basically the knocks that he took as a first-year coach that Dell had to take last year, and that basically the ceiling, was pretty high. It's been a few years now, but Butch probably needs to win, and probably needs to win in an impressive fashion. And we've seen the recruiting pick up for him from the high school ranks. They've gone gone into the portal. And speaking of portal, my gosh, Southern Miss, what are they? We talked about a little bit out of the outset. They weren't good. Now they have all of Marshall's or half Marshall's roster, basically. Right. Went down to Hattiesburg. So are they going to be better? Are they going to be, the bottom dweller again? Still have questions about Troy as well. Troy's a proud program, proud fan base. Don't really know what they're going to be. I'm sure they'll be, they won't be picked high in the preseason rankings that should come out here in a few weeks. But there's somebody that I would be a little surprised if they were, they put up a 3-9 or 4-8 season this year.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm as low on Gerard Parker as it seems like maybe Twitter is, right? It's very easy to pile on a coach when they're not winning, especially like you mentioned, inheriting a proud program in Troy that's used to winning, and then suddenly everything goes right out the door.
Yep.
With Arkansas State, they're the team that I'm kind of most interested to watch in the West, just because I think they could be really good. They could regress. They could have a terrible year. But so much of that for me falls on Jalen Rayner and what he does in his third year in that system. You mentioned they've done well in the portal. They brought in J.J. Harrell from Mississippi State, Nana Burris from FIU as well. And they joined Corey Rucker, who's the best receiver in program history, right? So can Rayner be the best quarterback in the Sun Belt this year? Is that on the table?
He's certainly got the nod today. I mean, that there's just, I mean, you look at first team, second team all Sun Belt last year, not all of those guys are around. That's the hard part. So it's almost like you have winner by default, I guess. But I mean, he's a really good player and has had moments. It's just not been super consistent, and really have taken that next step to championship level. Being able to and I always look at schedules. We talk about it a lot. It's not only when you play guys, but where you play guys. Texas State they have at home, Louisiana's at home, play Georgia Southern at home. You go 2-1 or 3-0 against that, you may be at the top of the West. If you go 1-2 or 0-3, so we're looking at unfulfilled promise again. And hey, well, Butch will get them next year, and the whole champions of life Twitter army will come at you.
Yeah. Last question for you, and I'll let you get out of here. The Take Back Texas movement seems to be alive and well with G.J. Kinney. Now, he did lose coordinator, right, in Mac Leftwich, who's now off to Texas Tech. But talk to me about the job that you saw from him last year, going 8-5. They get the bowl win. No, they didn't win the Sun Belt. They didn't fulfill that hype train that we had for them at the beginning of the year. But it does feel like Kinney has laid a lot of the groundwork to build a successful program in a place where we've just never seen football really be successful.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch, Texas State, kind of come into the Sun Belt. Just random. Was in Orlando in January. My daughter's competitively dance. We were down there for the college finals, and Lincoln Paré was in our hotel. So I got a chance to talk to him at breakfast for like 20 minutes about Texas State football, which was a lot of fun. And he's going to be their, I think, number one running back basically on the depth chart as well. And they're they're excited about what he was, kind of getting ready for there in spring. I think it could be another, step forward. Can they get to that 9 or 10 win, opportunity? We'll see. But that, in the West and overall in the Sun Belt, it may only take 9 wins to win the league. Certainly expectations are going to be high because of the attention, paid. But, I've seen 2 or 3 publications where they're picked first in the in the West basically, and they're kind of the pick to click again. So can they finally live up to that? They've got some talent there. I think they have a good coach and good play caller. So we'll see what happens when it actually comes to bear. But can the hype, to your point, hype can rise programs at times, but it also can saddle some where they're looking at it and. I'm sure Texas State fans are looking at how in the world do they give up 50 points to a Georgia State squad that was not putting up huge numbers like that.
No kidding.
Lincoln and I had that very conversation as he saw that I was a Georgia State guy. But no, I mean, it's, week to week in the Sun Belt is such a meat grinder. It's so tough to predict week to week. But they should be good. That's kind of what I'm leaning. I'm leaning on a pretty solid year there in San Marcos.
Yeah. So where we are in the middle of June here, it's obviously early. We haven't even had conference meetings. Fall camp obviously not open. If you had to pick winners of each division and a Sun Belt champ, where are you leaning right now?
Man, it's hard. Like you've said all the time, it's hard to lean against James Madison. I just, I think Chesney's a great coach. I think this may be one of those situations too, where you could see, especially a pop year from him, maybe his last at this level, just because he's won at every level in a major way. Still have questions about Louisiana, so we'll give Texas State the nod there, and would be a great battle there in the Sun Belt Championship game. Honestly, flip a coin. Could be JMU. I'll ride the Dukes. I was born in Virginia, so we'll give them a nod.
There you go. All right. Well, Ben Moore, 247 and PantherTalk.com. Ben, thrilled to have you break down the Sun Belt with us. Excited to follow the Sun Belt through your coverage as well, and really appreciate you jumping on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mitch. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that's another preview done here on the 3 Technique. We invite you to continue to subscribe, like the channel, interact with us on our social media as well. We'll have another preview coming out for you shortly. So for Ben Moore, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Until next time, so long, everybody.
Gracious, how about that?